You're muted, Larissa.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you stop the recording for a second? Okay, good morning. Good morning, everyone. We're so excited to have this conversation today with our friend Alan Chen. So I'm going to wait just like one more minute to see if there's anyone else that's going to join. I see we have Paula Daniel. Welcome, Paula. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So welcome to Diversity MBA's monthly Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Best Practice Conversation. I'm Larissa Williams, Vice President of DE&I Center of Excellence for Diversity MBA. We are so very excited to once again have a conversation about a company's best practice for DE&I. You know, these conversations are here to provide some insights, wisdom keys, and for some solutions on how to tackle our most pressing challenges that get in the way of creating, as I say, sustainable change within our organizations. Today, we will continue our conversation on being prepared for what's next, aligning your DE&I strategy to achieve diverse representation. I'm so excited about this topic because for me, the opportunity to achieve diverse representation in our workforce has its challenges. We know that, right? But some would say that as a result of the pandemic, in fact, remote flexibility has become the greatest opportunity for hiring diverse talent. But are we making real progress? As diversity practitioners, having the answer to this question with solutions is sometimes far reaching and an unfortunate reality for many of us leading this work. But today, we are so excited to have Alan Chen, who is the Senior Vice President and Diversity Executive with Bank of America, a leader, definitely a leader that's changing the game in banking and diversity. As always, we like to say it's a kitchen table conversation because this is where I believe the best conversations take place. We have this great opportunity to hear insights and wisdom from not only our guests, but from everyone participating on today's call. So before we get started, I would like for everyone to introduce themselves. If you can state your name, the company, and your role within your company, and then share what you would like to see achieved in this conversation. So after our very brief introductions, we will then start our conversation with Alan. So can we start with Paula?
Good morning. My name is Paula Daniel, and I'm the Manager of Supply Diversity at VF Corporation. And this is very related to what I do every day. So I just want to get more information and look forward to the information.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. And Kendall, it says Pam McAvane, but it's not Pam. Kendall, can you just briefly introduce yourself and say what you do for Diversity MBA?
Hi, hello everyone. My name is Kendall Gresham. I am a coordinator with Diversity MBA. I handle events for Diversity MBA.
Thank you so much, Kendall. Kendall has been with us for a while. He actually started as an intern and worked his way up. And after he graduated from college, one of the universities in Chicago. So we're so excited to have everyone here. Oh, it looks like we have someone else joining. Diana, one of our favorite people. We're just doing introductions, Diana. Could you briefly introduce yourself, say the name of your company and what your role is with your company?
Yes, good morning. Good morning. My name is Diana Starks. I'm with the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland, and I'm the Senior Vice President, Senior Advisor, and Director of the Office of Minority Women Inclusion. Glad to be here.
Oh, so happy that you've joined us today. Diana is actually a regular for us, so we are so excited that she's here today because she too is a wealth of knowledge. So as I mentioned at the during my introduction, that this is a kitchen table conversation, and and if anyone has any questions for Alan or for myself, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question. So Alan, let's get started. Let's get started. Thank you so much again for being with us today. So tell us a little bit about you and your role within Bank of America and how you keep yourself well.
Yeah, sure. I mean, thanks for having me today, Larissa. It's gonna be hopefully an awesome conversation. I always like the more intimate crowds. We get to usually interact a little bit more and have some good dialogue. And even just myself, I'm always learning too. So always interested to hear what others are doing as well. So Bank of America, I have been with the company for 20 years. I am right here in Atlanta, and we actually have a global diversity inclusion team. I specifically work for our chief D&I officer, and I support our global diversity inclusion council. That council is actually I would say, North Star of our company's D&I strategy. It is chaired by our CEO, Brian Moynihan. We have 33 senior leaders at the company that sit on that particular council that represent every part of the company. If you think about every line of business, every market that we have in all the different cities around the US, and every region in the world that we do business in, think of your EMEA, APAC, and LATAM areas of the world. And really, we get together to really think about the strategy of our company's D&I efforts and really cascades those throughout the organization. In addition to that, I know we always wear many hats. I also lead our Asian talent strategy for the company. I manage a lot of our external partnerships, including our great relationship with Diversity MBA that we have here. And that's just a few things that happen day in and day out in my role. As far as taking care of myself, that's a really good question, Larissa. I would say, when I think about it, it's more of the routines to me. It's making sure, one, we have routines, but secondly, this is probably the most important part of anything, is sticking to those routines, which I have started a couple of habits throughout the course of COVID. One of them, I actually started taking a lunch break. I know that a lot of us, we take lunch breaks, but I make sure that I not only take my lunch break and I'm not multitasking. Sometimes I'll be answering emails during lunch. Maybe I'll join a call and listen while I eat, where I'm not proactively needed to speak or anything like that. But I've tried to carve out time for myself to actually take a lunch, and I'm usually, on my phone watching YouTube videos or something like that, and trying to disconnect from my work. And the other, I would say, one that I would probably need to stick to more routinely is I got a Peloton during COVID, and I tried to ride the Peloton at least a couple times a week. And when I'm not traveling, sometimes it's hard, but I've been trying to stick to the Team Peloton, but that hasn't always been the case. So hopefully I will keep that routine up.
Yeah, Alan, thanks for sharing on how you keep yourself well. In all of our conversations, we start off by asking that question because we realize that this work sometimes can be very stressful. We've heard a lot of stories out there, but taking care of yourself is important, because if you are not well, how can you help others? So thank you so much for sharing that. So Bank of America has been a longtime partner of Diversity MBA, and you participated in our benchmarking like over the decades. And we've seen through some of the most difficult times in the market, and Bank of America continues to invest with a growing commitment to DE&I. Can you share some of your current strategies for diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Absolutely happy to. I think, as a D&I practitioner, and if you are a D&I practitioner, I know many on the phone are, these may sound very, I would say, typical, but I think they're important. These are things that we work on a regular basis. And, when we do things, we have the same placemat that we get to talk to every time we have, any type of all hands call with our team. It always foots to, really this placemat. It actually is similar within our company. And when you think about, our CEO, Brian Moynihan, every time he has an earnings town hall, he actually starts that town hall with going over the same initiatives that we have with our company. We call it our company's placemat, and that really cascades throughout the organization and all the different line of businesses. The company's overall placemat is there, and then always when we think about our line of business or our D&I initiatives, it's really a subset, some of our company's initiatives. So for us, I would say there are three things that we are focused on. The first is probably not a surprise, but it's people. It is all about the people, and essentially, do we look like the world that we live in? And not only do we look like the world that we live in, do we look like the clients and communities that we serve? And the question that we have there is something that our stakeholders, like our shareholders and our board, expect. And if you think about the results that we've had, 57% of our management team is diverse, 35% of that being women, 50% of our entire workforce globally is women, 50% of our US workforce is POC as well. So we are focused on making sure that we reflect the world that we live in. And the one thing that is probably key in that as well, that many companies are working on these days, is not only in the entire company as an enterprise, but also ensuring that it's also at the very most senior levels of the organization. So making sure that your senior levels within your organizations, whether it's by various bands, for example, or various management level steps from the CEO, making sure that it is reflective of the world that we live in. The second is inclusion. So we are always focused on making sure everyone can bring their whole selves to work every day. The way that we do that is through various initiatives. We have a D&I index, or think about your employee satisfaction survey. We also do a D&I survey as a part of that particular survey, and we're always gauging our results and benchmarking against the industry. We have employee resource groups. If you look at our employee resource groups, over 50% of our workforce is actually a participant in one or more employee resource groups. We have diversity leadership councils, which are the most senior leaders at our company that are leading these various councils that drive the strategy for that particular affinity. For example, we have our Black Executive Leadership Council, or we have our Asian Advisory Council, or we have our Military Advisory Panel, and really driving the strategy for that particular affinity within the organization. In addition, we do all kinds of great things as well. Think about your learning programs, think about your developmental programs, all those different things that really make sure that we are being an inclusive environment and everyone can bring their whole selves to work every day. And then the third thing that we're focused on is our clients and communities. Are we driving growth or revenue for the company as a part of our D&I strategy? And if you think about this one, I think a lot of folks say that it's a business imperative, or it's something that clients are asking for. If you take a look at it just in general of our world that we live in, and I'm just taking the US population as an example, if you look at the 2010 to 2020 census, POC grew by 25% from 2010 to 2020. Hispanic Latino grew by 23%, Asian grew by 36%, two or more grew by 127%. So if you look at in our lifetimes, the world that we live in will actually have a larger demographics in our lifetime of person of color, and that's just really kind of the reason behind why you should make sure that you are a diverse and inclusive culture, because it is the way that our world is moving here in the United States. So those are really the three things: people, inclusion, clients, and communities that we're focused on, and all the things that we do from a D&I perspective are usually under one of those buckets.
That's great. So I'm going to jump to my question about employee resource groups, since you mentioned them, because we know that a lot of organizations really leverage the support of the employee resource group to help execute on some of their programs. So I'm curious to know how does Bank of America leverage employee resource groups to help with your D&I efforts?
Yeah,
More specifically, do they have goals and Do they partner with you on the goals that you're trying to achieve for the organization? How does it work? How do you have it set up?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say what we've used as, I would say this year as our tagline for our employee resource groups, they are the culture carriers, or the heartbeat of our company. I was just in Charlotte earlier this week, and we had, our employee network summit, where we got all of our leaders, for our employee resource groups around the company together to discuss what our strategy is, for the organization. And yes, the short answer is they do have goals, and to no surprise, it does have the same 3 buckets that I just talked about a little bit earlier. We've evolved our employee resource groups, and one of the, I would say, opportunities that we had is a lot of our employee resource groups started and always in a good place. I mean, they've been organic, they've been grassroots in nature, but I don't know if our employee resource groups knew what our D&I strategy was. A lot of times it was networking, ice cream socials, different things across the company. And what we've had a concerted effort for our employee resource groups is making sure that we align it to those 3 buckets that I mentioned a little bit earlier, which is people, inclusion, clients, and communities. We have 360 plus chapters around the world. So as you can imagine, that is a big body of work. So, you think of globally, we have 97 markets that Bank of America does business in. And, each one of those markets has multiple employee resource groups, which is why we have 360 plus local chapters. And that also includes, regions around the world as well. So we really had a concerted effort to make sure that it is aligned with our D&I strategy, and being, I would say, the culture carrier versus doing one-off initiatives across the board. And what we found as well is when, our employee resource group leaders knew what the D&I strategy is, the more connected they were to, the work, and feeling more so included at the company. And not only just included at the company, ensuring that they are part of, senior leadership and being a part of making an impact in driving the bottom line for our company. So I would say that that's what we've been really focused with our employee resource groups. The one interesting thing from a clients and community perspective that we've more so done more recently is we have our local markets, and our local markets, and I'll take Atlanta as an example since I'm here in Atlanta. We have councils in the market. For example, we have BELT, the Black Executive Leadership Table, which is basically leaders within each revenue driving business sitting at the table and driving D&I efforts for that respective affinity. And that includes our Black Professionals Group, which is our ERG for our Black African American community. And they are driving business for the company through referrals, through D&I events. Think of, Black History Month, Juneteenth that's coming up, all the different things, because not only is it something that we do as a company well, but our clients are asking for these type of initiatives, and we are bringing clients to the table, not only so that we can learn from them, but also, vice versa, so they can learn from us. So that's something that's been interesting, and it's been across markets. We don't have it in every single market, the 97 markets here in the US, but they've really been, I would say, building up across the different markets that we have in the US.
So 360 plus chapters, that's huge. That's a lot. But, but you did say 50% of your organization is a part of an ERG, which is awesome. So I just have one question about that. So I know you say they start by grassroots efforts. So do you play a role in appointing who leads those groups, or are they kind of selected by the organization?
So, yes. So we do have succession planning for our ERGs. And just to give you an idea, the lay of the land of how our 360 ERGs are organized is we have 11 different employee resource groups, 11 unique ones. Think of, Asian, Black, African American, Hispanic, Latino, military, generational. So 11 unique ones that we have across the company for that make up the 360 chapters. Each one of those 11 networks has an enterprise leadership team, which is the team that really leads all the chapters for the specific group. So for example, I am one of the enterprise chairs for our Asian Leadership Network, and we have 21 chapters around the US. You could say the same thing for Black African American, Hispanic Latino, all the different groups that are out there. And that's how we're organized. And our D&I team really leads the efforts in planning for succession and making sure that HR is engaged to define who those leaders are for each one of those enterprise teams. Now, we also have our local markets, and then our local market HR is very involved in making sure that folks who are in leadership positions in the local market for each one of those individual chapters in the various cities across the United States are also in collaboration with the local market HR as well. So depending on the leader and what position that they play, we do have the D&I team who really supports the efforts to make sure that we are getting the right succession, the right leaders in the right position, and we make sure that they are having the tools that they need in order to be successful as well.
That's great. With the pandemic, with some of our organizations, some of them experienced a mass exodus of talent during the pandemic, and especially with women. So I'm curious to know what Bank of America is doing to ensure the sustainability of your pipeline. You mentioned that your employee resource groups play a role in succession planning, which is awesome. That is actually a best practice. But I'm curious to learn, how does Bank of America ensure that your pipeline is sustained with diversity, since we're talking about diverse representation?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So it's interesting. We heard about the Great Resignation, throughout the pandemic, and sorry, my light likes to go off when I'm not moving too much in my office, which is a great energy savings and expense saving exercise, by the way, if you haven't had that. But anyway, so for us, we heard about the Great Resignation, and we keep a close eye on our attrition numbers. But it is interesting, and many of your organizations are probably experiencing the same thing this year as the economic outlook has been very volatile. So has that impacted our actual attrition at the company. We are actually seeing very strong retention numbers or a low level of attrition throughout this year. I can imagine a lot of folks have a lot of uncertainty in their outlook, and you hear a lot about layoffs and things like that from other companies that are out there, very large companies that are out there that are laying off various parts within their organization. So we've kind of gone full circle from the Great Resignation to where we're seeing attrition numbers that are very low and very strong retention numbers. But to me, as far as how we're building the pipeline, we have all the, I would say, programmatic things that are out there that, I think we're amazing at, we're best in class at. We have developmental programs for leaders, diverse developmental programs for our diverse talent here at the company. We have D&I training across the organizations, all the things that I would say that are programmatic and, things that probably are our best practices, for your team. But what to me really makes the difference in being a great company and making sure that our pipeline is sustained, it goes back to the inclusion piece that I mentioned in our 3 buckets. Because when I think about inclusion, that has so much impact on being at the company that you want to be at, than really a lot of things out there. If you ever had a chance to listen to Dr. Tony Robbins, he is actually a D&I practitioner, and also he speaks at all kinds of various engagements. And he talks about inclusion. He talks about belonging as a part, of his discussion. But if you think about feeling included, like who would want to work at a company where you don't feel included? Like what would motivate you to be your best if you didn't feel like included? Like what if you didn't feel included like in the promotional process? So to me, like having a culture of inclusion is probably the hardest thing to do, yet the biggest driver of what a sustained pipeline looks like, because it has to start from the top and it has to have a play from every single person in the organization. We put D&I goals in every single person's performance development plan here at the company, but everyone has to embrace it and everyone has to live it in order for it to really work. And that I would say is the hardest thing, but the biggest, to me, impact to making sure that we have a sustained pipeline and we are retaining our best talent here at the company, because we know those who live that life of inclusion are going to be the future leaders of our company. So it's one of those things where it's not like, hey, do X, Y, and Z, but hey, do this, but it's really hard to quantify what to do. But I think it is the biggest impact.
You know what? That's a great segue to my next question about leadership accountability. With our Diversity MBA Inclusive Leadership Index, we bring the intersection of DE&I and talent management strategies to the forefront. Our intent with that benchmarking is provide leaders with predictive analytics that informs them, know how to use our tools to help them execute and adjust their strategies based on what the best practices are. But we find that one of the biggest hurdles with this work is leadership accountability. And we know that with your background, Alan, you spent some time on the business side. So what does leadership accountability mean to business leaders there, and how are they held accountable? You talked about the D&I goals, and you have a culture of inclusion, but how are the leaders held accountable? Because sometimes, as I say, that's a tough nut to crack, to get other leaders from the sides of the business to be accountable for DE&I. So how does that look there at Bank of America?
Yeah, it's a good question, and probably there's not one simple answer. I think the simple answer, and what if we lived in a perfect world, I think this would be an easy answer, is what you said a little bit earlier, Larissa, which is it's on every person at the company's performance development plan, whether you report to the CEO, whether you just started with the company. For us, it is a part of every single person's performance plan. So, when you think about accountability, that could be the simple answer. It's on the performance plan. But, I think the big difference, and I think where a lot of our leaders who have progressed through the company is what I talked a little bit about just a second ago, is living that particular goal, or making sure that they are demonstrating that particular goal. I think it's important for all of our leaders to have direct reports. Our great leaders, our CEO, direct reports, and making sure that they are cascading their goals to their leaders. Their leaders are performing well. I think that is super important. But one of the things that we also take a look at, and if there are fellow HR professionals, you would probably relate to this as well, is we've gone from a world where we're making an impact within our team to where we are making an impact throughout the organization as a company, and more so what our sphere of influence is, and having the influence to make an impact to what you're trying to accomplish across the organization, across businesses, because not everyone reports to me, not everyone reports to another person or a peer of mine in the company, but the goals that we have for us as a team is impacting the enterprise, impacting the entire company. So where we've seen the most influence across the companies is where we found our greatest leaders. They may have large teams, they may be an individual contributor, but what we know is they are making a difference at the company. And we have demonstrated that those leaders are progressing their careers, which is really ensuring that when you think about the accountability and you think about having it on your PEP, when you see leaders progressing in your organization that are taking kind of that goal to the next level, you'll see that you want to demonstrate what those leaders are doing in your own actions in order to try to progress your career at the company as well. So that's what I think that we've tried to do, is make sure that we've had, influential leaders, ones who have made a difference across the enterprise, not necessarily with their direct reports, and making sure they have a large sphere of influence, progressing them through the company, demonstrating that to our, people across the company, and hopefully folks will model that behavior.
And for those leaders who have kind of shown themselves to be allies and champions for diversity within Bank of America, do you also see where they have successfully included diversity goals within their organization's business priorities?
Yeah, I mean, the same for, even our allies, advocates, and we actually have this whole ally and advocate program that's out there. There's one specific to LGBTQ plus, and there's others that are out there as well. But yeah, for our allies and advocates, it's really the same, right? I mean, they don't, you don't have to be a person of color, for example, in order to live those values. You can be anyone across the company and live those values, and the results will be the same. In fact, some of our greatest leaders at the company are, I would say, our greatest allies here at the company, and they are the ones that folks are asking questions to, and the ones that we are tapping to ensure that we have a perspective that is inclusive of everyone across the company. So I would say it's very applicable to those as well. And we've made a very strong effort to make sure that everyone is included. Sometimes a lot of folks talk about the elephant in the room. I think we've done a really great effort in making sure everyone's included.
So one of the questions that I haven't asked, and I still want to stay on this issue of accountability, because so many leaders who are doing this work, this is their biggest challenge. And so, I didn't talk about recruiting. So with leaders who are allies and advocates and champions for this work at Bank of America, do you also see where they have diversity recruitment goals, like for certain positions within their organizations? And is there any expectation that they should have diverse slates for any of, like, maybe the higher level positions or roles that they're recruiting or trying to fill?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and I'll tell you. So I always go back to like this simple answer and kind of like what the biggest opportunities or the ways to really bring life. So we do have in our senior leaders, we do have goals for every line of business leaders, aspirational goals that are out there for them. Not only do we have goals, we tell that publicly as well. So if you went out to our annual report that just came out for 2022, that came out earlier this year, you will see that our goals language is actually in our annual report. So it's one thing to say that we have goals and aspirational goals, but I think it takes it to the next level when you put it out there publicly. Your shareholders can see it, your board of directors can see it. So not only are they goals, but they are goals that are out there publicly as well, that we state that we have goals for our senior leaders at this company. So we do the diverse slate practice as well here at our organization. But I think to me it's just not only just saying that we have aspirational goals, but we also say that, publicly as well. And, when you have something that's out there, on the internet these days, folks will read it. So that I think takes it to the next level. So it's in our 2022 annual report, and we talk about, our various goals across the organization.
That's wonderful. Before I go to my last question, I'm going to open it up to our guests. Does anyone have any questions for Alan? Okay, so we're going to keep going to our last question. So it's a big question, Alan. We go out with a bang.
I think they've all been big questions.
Yeah. So, at the top of the hour, I said that we were talking about, how do we prepare for what's coming next? And the reason why we're doing kind of a series with that, with that topic is because of, so many of us had so many challenges during the pandemic, where we weren't ready. We weren't ready. And so we had to develop real-time solutions quickly, to really keep our employees engaged, to make certain that we were supporting all of the employees. And so it was a lot, right? So, but as diversity executives and diversity leaders, what do we need to do to continue to show our value within organizations? And so I'm going back to that question. So what's one thing diversity practitioners should do to prepare for what's coming next?
Yeah, it's a good question of what we should be prepared for. And there are so many moments in time that I think throughout the last few years that I think we had a strong infrastructure for as D&I practitioners, but I don't necessarily think we were prepared, but we didn't know the gravity of some of those moments. I think of
Right.
the murder of George Floyd, the API, the anti-Asian hate sentiments that were out there as well. I don't necessarily think we knew that was going to happen or
Right.
could have foreshadowed that could happen, or who would ever want to foreshadow
Anti-Semitism too. Yeah.
those
Mhm.
things happening.
Yeah.
But I think what to me like made our company and many others very practical in those situations is we built the culture that was there to address it. I think earlier in my career, I can remember that, whenever talking about ethnicity or talking about, religion or talking about different things was like
Mhm.
a very no in your
Mhm.
company. And, any great company, I think, welcomes those conversations. I think many companies call them courageous conversations. We have courageous conversations here at the company. So ensuring that we have, that culture built for that. But what we've done that gave us, really kind of preparatory, like we've built all these different playbooks now, right? That really provide us an opportunity to really leverage during those times. And, they're not going to fit every situation. Like who would have known, like there needs to be a playbook for a pandemic, for example. But,
Right.
I think, we were
Mhm.
able to have that culture. We were able to have, the infrastructure there for us to be able to address and tackle those various situations. I think what I anticipate, in the future as well, and I see it, and it's interesting because I was in Charlotte earlier this week, and we were with one of our nonprofit partners, CBI, in Charlotte, and one of the speakers, had mentioned all the, I would say, words that we brought into the D&I umbrella, right? You see, it started with diversity and inclusion. Now you hear equity a lot being brought into the fold. You're hearing a lot of the word belonging that is out there as well. But I think, she made one good point, which is way down the road for D&I efforts, which is the word justice. And I think to me, that is something that is on the horizon for all of our D&I efforts that are out there. And I think one thing that you've seen as I would say, practical realization of this is many companies are ensuring that their corporate social responsibility efforts, CSR, is actually integrated into their D&I efforts. For example, my amazing leader, Cynthia Bowman, is not only our chief D&I officer, but she is our corporate social responsibility officer as well. So you'll see that, to me, that's something that is on the horizon, that is out there. And I think it was a pretty interesting one that she made just earlier this week. So that to me is like, what do we need to have as a playbook for, these opportunities? What are we making sure that we're doing from a CSR perspective is integrated to our D&I efforts. So that to me is something that was very telling in what the future is. I think it's very accurate.
Yeah, I love that you all created a playbook. That's wonderful because, like you said, we didn't know that a pandemic was coming. But I would agree with you that equity and justice. I believe that those of us who are doing this work will have to have some type of capabilities in this area. So we're definitely going to have to, if you don't have it, you're going to have to step up your skills so you'll be able to provide that to your organization, especially if your organization has efforts that's impacting the community. And a lot of us do have our DE&I strategies that focus on our community efforts because our customers live in the community. So,
100%.
so that's really good. That's really good. So I'm going to open it up again to our guests. So Diana or Paula, do you have any questions for Alan before we wrap it up?
I have no questions. Just want to say thank you for being willing to share your information. It's always helpful to see how other companies are, structuring this work. And since we are working on the same common goal, it's always helpful to find other ways of doing it to move forward. So thank you.
Mhm.
My pleasure. Thank you for attending.
And I echo what Paula said. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm always interested in hearing what others are doing in the DEI space. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, if we can get some insight on what the next couple of interest rate hikes are going to look like, that would be very useful. I'm just kidding.
They're going up. They're going up. I have a couple of properties I want to sell, and man, it's not looking good. So, but I want to thank you, Alan, for taking out the time in your day to have this kitchen table conversation with us. Thank you to Paula and Diana for taking time out of your day to attend the conversation. I want to say that we do record these conversations because we find that folks do register and things come up and they're not available at that time to actually log in to participate. So one of the things that we found is that a lot of folks go back in later and listen to the conversation. And so Alan, just give you a heads up, should they have any questions, can they reach out to you or send you an email to ask you some questions should they have it?
Absolutely. Happy to help wherever I can.
And can you state what your email address is?
Yeah. It's Allen, ALLEN .H .Chen, CHEN @bofa.com. It's BOFA.com.
That's wonderful. All right. Thank you so much. So thank you, everybody. And we look forward to seeing you next month at our next best practice conversation. Everybody have a great day.
Have a great weekend.
You too.